Well, good morning. It's a blessing to be here. How many of you have started attending this church sometime over the last 2 years? It's a huge percentage of you. That's great. The last time I was here was 2 years ago, so we've been busy traveling. How many of you have gotten saved over the last 2 years? How many new believers? Okay. Good. No matter how long you've been saved, this is the right church for you to be in. Your pastor, as you know, he loves you and he is not afraid to speak the truth. Genesis to Revelations. Unfortunately, as I travel the country, that is a rare thing today. It shouldn't be. It should be every church in America that proudly and boldly proclaims the truth to a dying world, but it's not. And so what you have here has such great value. Make sure you cherish it. Make sure you're praying for your pastor. Make sure you support this church and all the things it's doing to be a light and be the salt right here where God has placed you. It's a vital mission. We are in a battle for our country, for liberty, as most people know. Over the last 4 or 5 years, so many millions of people have awakened to see something's not right. What's happening to our country? It's not the same country I was born into. And the Bible tells us so crystal clear, this battle, it's always been going on. It's escalating now, but it's a spiritual battle. And you have to know that. That means you're not going to see all the attacks. You're not going to be aware of everything going on because a lot of it's invisible to the human eye. But there in Ephesians chapter 6, it tells us, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that ye may be able to stand against the wiles, the tricks of the devil." Okay? You believers in Christ, you have to have the armor on or you will be a casualty in this conflict. It is a war and it is real, and he's telling us you have to put the armor on. Otherwise, if you're not reading your Bible every day and following the calendar here at the church, you're going to be a sitting duck for anything that comes along that sounds good but is not good. What does Proverbs tell us? There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the ends thereof are the ways of death. What is that? Why did God tell us that? He wanted us to know you can be on a path that seems right, but it is not. So I just want to encourage you in that. You have to take this seriously. And then the next verse, it tells us this whole thing. "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." We all know, we've heard the story of Jesus and his disciples, right? He had 12 disciples, and what did they end up doing by the end of their life? They turned the world upside down. God blessed their efforts as they shared the gospel and spoke truth, and then most of them had to die the martyr's death standing for the truth, but they did that. Well, we know that Jesus has his followers today. Who are they? It's us, right? What followers of Christ, what are we supposed to be doing? We're supposed to be working his purposes here on this earth. We're supposed to be glorifying him in everything that we do. We're supposed to be a light. So what does that mean? Our life's going to be different. So the world looks at it and goes, "Why are you like that? How come you don't curse like I do?" "Oh, I'll tell you why. I met Jesus. He's helped me clean up my mouth," or whatever it might be. Where the world sees the transforming effect of Jesus Christ in our life and realize he has to be real. Your life is proof of it. That's what we work to do in our life, all of us. To make it evident to the world he is real, because what he's done in my life is proof of that. And he can do it. That's the wonderful thing. He does that work in our life. I have studied communism a lot of my life. God just gave me that job. It's really interesting how he got into that. 2 years ago, I kind of gave my testimony on some of that. You can probably watch that still online. But I'm going to talk this morning about the Marxist communist attack on Christianity. Okay, this is the enemy, and just like Jesus has his followers, and we all know that, we've been naive to not think Satan has his too. He does. Who are they? They're the Marxist communists. How do I know? Because everything they are doing is to unravel the way God intended things to be. That's why they're attacking marriage and family and gender and everything, a free enterprise system where man can profit from his labor. They're trying to undo everything the way God intended it. And it's a war going on, and it's real, and we are losing this battle because they're far more committed to their lie than we are the truth. And I'll talk a little more about that at the end, but that's why it's important. There's a great book that was written in 1952 called Witness by Whittaker Chambers, and it's an incredible story. But Whittaker Chambers was a communist in the 1930s in America, in Washington, D.C., working his way into our government, and then something happened. One morning, he was watching his little daughter eat breakfast, and he tells about it in an incredible way in his book, and he said, all of a sudden, I noticed the design of her ear, and I realized there had to be a creator. Isn't that amazing how God got a hold of him? And so he finally becomes a Christian. He has to break with the communist cause. But in this incredible book where he explains that whole process of how God got a hold of him in his life, he boiled it down to this, and it is this simple. He said, the whole battle is this. Everyone complicates it with all these things. It's God or man. That's it. It's your only choice. God or man. Well, if you follow God, there's only one God, and it is the God of the Bible, Jesus Christ, and you get Christianity, and with Christianity, you get liberty, you get freedom, you get a way of living life that makes your life wonderful and blessed, and you get to be a blessing to others. And if you do it man's way, I don't care what variety of man's way you do it, it ends in communism. What is communism? It's simply when you remove the biblical principles from a culture, you throw God out of everything, you will end in communism 100% of the time. And that's why we need to know about that as Christians, what that is and how evil it is. A few things that they do that are important to understand in the strategy so you're not deceived, again, by things that sound good. Number one, I've noticed they always tell you where they are going. That's kind of what I've done. That's what the movies are. I simply dug in and read their books from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Where are they wanting to take us? And they laid it out crystal clear. And you go, oh, okay, that's where we're going. Or they're trying to take us there. We don't want to go there, so we need to stand against this. Number two, they always state their purpose as the opposite of what it is. And I'm going to talk about that, giving some examples in a minute. A great example of that is the ACLU. Anybody ever heard of that group? When that group started, the American Civil Liberties Union, you'd think, oh, this is going to be about protecting our God-given rights. The founder was Roger Baldwin, who was a communist, and he said, when asked, what's the ACLU all about? He said, quote, the goal is communism, unquote. We're going to remove every vestige of Christianity from this country so we can move forward in an atheistic society and create a communist world. That's what it was about. But most people are like, well, no, this is about civil liberties. How do they package things for us? What about creation care? The Marxists come up with a way of, hey, these Christians care about the creation like everybody does. If we can package it in biblical terms, we can get these suckers to push the radical environmental movement agenda, and they won't know they're working for us to really tear down things. It's not to help the environment. It's not to be a blessing to others. And the last thing they always do, they always accuse you of doing what they are doing. So if they're acting in a racist way, which they usually do, they'll say, no, you're the racist. And so that's what they've been done. This threat, a lot of people have just awakened recently, but they don't realize this threat has been here for so long and is so significant. I'm going to read you just a couple sentences. This is Time magazine in 1955, okay? In an article in there, it said this: the conflict between communism and freedom is the problem of our time. It overshadows all other problems. This conflict mirrors our age, its toils, its tensions, its troubles, and its tasks. On the outcome of this conflict depends the future of all mankind. Why do we stand against communism? Because we want to love our neighbor. And we want to destroy this system that enslaves and tortures and torments people worldwide. What is Marxism? A lot of people use the word Marxism now, I think, as almost kind of a watered down thing, but I will tell you this from my study. A Marxist is a communist. When you adhere to Marxist philosophies, it creates a communist system, communist world. But Vladimir Lenin, who was the founder of the Soviet Union, and he is the genius behind pushing these ideas. Listen to him talk about what Marxism is, and you'll see this is what's been going on in our country for 100 years. But listen to this, quote, "Carefully, attentively, and skillfully take advantage of every, even the smallest fissure among the enemy. Seize every, even the smallest opportunity of gaining a mass ally, even though this ally be temporary, vacillating, unstable, unreliable, and conditional. Those who do not understand this fail to understand even a grain of Marxism." What he means is you become all things to all people. You want a mass ally, even with your enemy. If you can use your enemy for any amount of time possible, use them. Like I said with the creation care, package your agenda in terms that appeal to them so they will march with you and we're going to save the planet or whatever, but you're the one that's orchestrating what it means to save the planet, which will have nothing to do with anything except gaining power and control over the people. So you can finally implement that communist system where there'll be no opposition. But that's what they did. What is the goal of communism? Again, Vladimir Lenin stated it back in 1920. So we've known what it is if we've had our eyes open. Here it is. Quote, "First we will take Eastern Europe, then the masses of Asia. We will encircle the last bastion of capitalism, the United States of America. We will not need to fight. It will fall as a ripe fruit into our hands." That's what they did. They took Eastern Europe, then they went to China and took over China, and then they're encircling the last bastion of capitalism. What's so amazing to me, in 1920, he knew all the things they were doing within America, where when it finally came to take America, he goes, "We're not going to have to fire a shot. They're going to just collapse from within because we're going to have rotted them from the inside out with immorality and everything, and they are going to be an easy target." Excuse me. So many of the movements I've seen, I'll just go through a few of them quickly, but it's the Marxist, again, packaging something that sounds good, but to be able to use the energies of people to accomplish their purposes. A few summers ago, the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, that's all that was. And we know from the Marxists, whatever the stated purpose is, the actual purpose is the opposite. So when they call it, I knew it the day I heard of that group, it's Black Lives Matter, which of course they do, but I knew, okay, I looked at the founders of it, and you can go to their own webpage right now and watch their videos, and they will proudly say, "We are trained Marxist organizers." And they have a communist flag on the wall behind them as they're saying that. Okay, so, but I knew, okay, this is a movement to show black lives don't mean anything at all. I knew that before the first riot, because that's who they are. And then I watched the fruit of it, and I saw exactly, what do? They go in and stir up the young black people to burn down the very businesses that would give them a job, to burn down their neighborhood, their stores. They slip out in the night, all the Marxist organizers, let those kids get arrested. And what did they really do? They used black people to create the chaos they love to get more power and control. That's all it's about. They despise black people. But they will use anyone. If they can appeal to the black community, they hate Christians. But if they can appeal to us in any way, they'll use us as long as they can. One that's worth talking about for a minute here, because it's so important. is the environmental movement. That is a totally communist movement. It's genius because they pick something that we all care about. Every single person on the planet cares about the environment. And they knew that. They go, this is genius. And it has no boundaries. It's global. So one country can't say, we don't want to be involved in that. Oh, no, you have to, because whatever you do affects us. They've packaged this in that way. But I dug into that, and it's really quite amazing. I'm shocked, but if you go back to the founding of the environmental movement, it started in 1883 by a man named Karl Marx. The last paper he wrote before he died was called Dialectics of Nature, and he talked about how we're going to use the environment to destroy capitalism. We're going to claim that their smog is going to black out the sun, and then we're not going to be able to grow enough crops, and we're all going to starve to death. Global cooling. He was a little bit smarter to bring that up as opposed to global warming. Cooling is dangerous, warming is not. But I want to talk about this for a second because it's been rotten from the core. The first Earth Day in 1970, guess what day they picked to have the Earth Day? Vladimir Lenin's 100th birthday. This thing has been read to the core from day one, but they realized we can't be so obvious, so they've learned to repackage it. But the whole premise of this, and we need to understand the times as Christians, because this lie is not going away. Whenever world government is implemented, it will be implemented under the guise of saving the planet. And the totalitarian control, the 15-minute cities, the system of enslavement will be brought about supposedly to save the planet, which of course it will not be doing. But 3 quick things on it you have to know. Their founding premise is CO2 is a pollutant, right? That's laughable if you got a real education. CO2 is plant food, and we don't have near enough of it in the atmosphere. Do you understand that? We have 400 parts per million. If you get to 150 parts per million, which isn't that far from where we are, everything green dies. But it's always the opposite, right? So they call themselves the green movement, and they're trying to cut carbon dioxide, when the ideal level of carbon dioxide for everything that is green, we know from greenhouse growers, it's 1,600 parts per million, 4 times what it is right now. That's why the greenhouse growers pump carbon dioxide in there to quadruple it, and then the plant growth just explodes. I mean, so it's a total lie. We want more carbon dioxide. If you love what is green, you want to double, triple, quadruple it, which you can't do. The amount that humans produce is just fractional to the amount the oceans and stuff. So we're not in control of that anyway. But reality is, if we could create more, it would be a great blessing to everything that is green. And they call themselves the green movement. It's always the opposite. They say there's overpopulation. But if you've studied demography, world populations are collapsing right now because people have refused the blessings of children for decades now. And so that shows the satanic side of it. It's anti-human at its core. That's all it is about. To enslave humans and to kill them. That's the environmental movement today. And then they tell us to be fearful of warming. Okay? On a hot day here in the middle of the summer, we think, oh, if it went up a degree or 2, that would be not good. Well, you might not be quite as comfortable, but if you go to the equator down in Ecuador, I spent one summer down there, and you'll find something real quick. The hottest place on earth. Life loves warmth. The biodiversity of plants and animals down there is unbelievable. They have hundreds of species of plants and animals and insects and birds. They can't even survive here in California. It's too cold here. They can't make it. It's unbelievable. And then you go up to northern Canada or Alaska and you'll see, oh my goodness, there's only a few species of trees that can survive, only a few animals. Life hates the cold. It's deadly. The reality is this, and you need to know these so you don't buy into their lies that sound good. If we could raise the global temperatures a degree or 2, which we can't, it would be the greatest blessing to the world. We would have hundreds of millions of more acres we could farm in Canada and Russia. We would have more food than we know what to do with. And they tell us, no, it's always the opposite. Be fearful of warming when we should be fearful of cooling. CO2 is a pollutant when it's plant food. Overpopulation, no, we're getting ready to have a collapse of population worldwide. But I just want you to see that because that's the way it is in every issue. And the very things that are in, I flew up to Vancouver, British Columbia several years ago and interviewed Dr. Patrick Moore. Anybody ever heard of him? He's the co-founder of Greenpeace. So he cares about the environment. And I went there because I wanted to hear him say it. I said, Dr. Moore, why did you leave Greenpeace, the very organization you started to help with environmental issues? He said, exactly, I was shocked myself. He goes, because the communists took it over in the 1980s. And he goes, now what they're doing is trying to destroy capitalism worldwide. And then he said this, it was so powerful for someone that totally cares about the environment. He said, and the policies they're implementing are actually hurting the environment worldwide and the people of the world, which have value too. And I thought, wow, so many of us have been lied to. Then you go on to the movement, just the homosexual, LBGT, whatever it is now. They keep changing it. But that whole movement, if you look back in 1950, the first homosexual activist organization started in America was called the Mattachine Society. And I looked into that and I found out, oh my goodness, it was started by one of the leaders of the Communist Party USA, Henry Hay. And it was to break down God's way of doing things, to break down the culture, to break down morality, to destroy the value of the family. That's all the transgender movement is. It's an attack on God creating man in his image, male and female. And it's so evil because this movement, unlike most that are appealing to older people, it's preying on our children. These sweet children are being lied to. They're not being told what they should be told. You are perfect the way God made you. Every little thing about you is perfect. You're cute, you're adorable, you're wonderful, and God has a plan for your life. Instead of these lies, but Marxists will use anyone, they will mutilate anyone, they will torture anyone, they will do anything because they are Satan's disciples to get what they want, and that's all that movement is about. You go to the feminist movement of the 1960s, and you dig into that, and they act like, oh, we're for women's rights, where it had nothing to do with that. Betty Friedan wrote the book Feminine Mystique, which was the book that started the entire feminist movement. It sold millions of copies. Tens of millions of women read it and believed the lie and thought, I'm going to go find fulfillment working for some man out in the world. And they left their families, or they didn't get married to begin with. They never had children because they believed, no, the home, Betty Friedan said, is a comfortable concentration camp. That's how she defined the family. But we found out years later, she was a supporter of Joseph Stalin. And she was doing her part for the communist cause to break down the family. Do you know why, women, they've always tried to get you out of the home? Because they want your position, which is the most powerful position in the entire world. You're raising the next generation. But they knew, no, we want to be in control. We want to raise those kids, because if we can raise the kids, we've got everything. Then you go into, and this one is not popular a lot of times, but I have to speak on it because millions of young people, including some of my friends that I grew up with, are in their graves today because of the rock and roll movement of the 60s and 70s, the drug, sex, and rock and roll culture that destroyed millions of our young people. It's still doing it today. But it created the rebellion that then the communists took advantage of to totally just turn everything on its head, to get kids to rebel against all traditions, all morality, all everything. It was so purposeful, and it was a carefully orchestrated plan. You're not going to like the next thing I say, but you need to know the history of this as I've dug in and studied it. John Lennon himself, from the Beatles, was a communist, a hardcore communist. He wrote the song Working Class Hero as the anthem for the American Revolution. I found interviews of him from the Soviet newspaper in Moscow during the early 70s, and they're interviewing him, what's going on? He goes, we're breaking down the culture to be fertile for the communist revolution. It was crystal clear. This was not, they knew what they were doing. And he even said later, I'm disappointed we got caught up so much in the drugs ourselves and everything. We weren't as effective as we could be. But that's what the root of it was, this rebellion. Because they wanted to get the energies of those young people for revolution. A communist is always working toward revolution, a violent, actual revolution. And a lot of people don't realize this, but back in 1971, they'd created the rebellion, the drug culture. They'd gotten into a lot of the college campuses, and they went for the revolution in 1971. A lot of you that were even alive in 71 probably go, what? Here's the reality. In an 18-month period, in 1971 and into 72, guess how many bombings of buildings there was in America? Now this is, just think in your mind, in America, this isn't some foreign country. How many buildings were blown up in America in 18 months during that time? And this was done by the Students for a Democratic Society, which was a communist organization on all our college campuses. It was the Weather Underground with Bill Ayers. They did all these bombings, these communist college groups. You ready? This is Time magazine too, it's not some fringe group. Time magazine. The FBI says there was 2,500 buildings blown up in that 18-month period. That's 5 a day for 18 months. They were going for the revolution, and they were hoping it would stir up and overflow into society, and we'd all pick up our guns and start killing each other off. But they found out they had a problem. You know what the problem was? There was too much Bible and too much Christianity in the people of America. They found out what Antonio Gramsci had said in the 1930s was right. You cannot take down a Christian country until you destroy their belief in God. Here's what he said in 1930s America. Any country grounded in Judeo-Christian values can't be overthrown until those roots are cut. Socialism is precisely the religion that must overwhelm Christianity. In the new order, socialism will triumph by first capturing the culture via infiltration of the schools, universities, churches, and media. That's what we've lived through, people. That revolution of infiltration of the institutions that have changed us. That's why we're so different. They knew, no, we've got to. And so those 60s radicals, the Bill Ayers and all those that were founders of the Weather Underground, what did they do the rest of their life? They all went right into education and into media. They wanted to raise the children. What did Bill Ayers do? Who did those? He was responsible for those bombings. He went to the University of Chicago and taught there the rest of his life. But I was digging in and researching on him. Guess what else he did? He was on the committee to write the curriculum for all our government schools for a decade or so. A communist Marxist news. Hey, how can I influence the next generation? Oh, I'm going to write the curriculum for the schools, and maybe I'll have some influence there. We wonder what's happened to the church in America, which was their number one enemy, just as Antonio Gramsci talked about. They knew we've got to harness the energies of the church, but to do that, we first got to turn them away from God's word and the absolute truth therein, because it contradicts everything we are speaking. Back in 1954, the Committee on Un-American Activities, they interviewed one of the top communist officials in America who had defected. Once he saw that Stalin had killed 20 plus million of their own people, it kind of woke him up, and he came before Congress, and they asked him, what have you been doing to take us down from within? He said, the number one thing we've been doing is going into the seminaries and divinity schools since the 1930s to get our degrees and then stay on and be the professors. So we would be the one training the pastors. And today, 90+% of all of our seminaries in America do not believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God anymore. That's how successful they have been. And you wonder why there's so many churches sorting their trash on Sunday night. That's why. It's lost people wanting to look good and feel good. They don't know Jesus Christ. They have not been transformed. They have been infiltrated and brainwashed by the Marxists to think do-gooderism is going to get you to heaven. It's not. It's only, it's only Jesus and nothing else. And real quickly, as I start wrapping up here, you know all the riots and things that were going on the college campuses just a month or so ago before school let out. Since I've been studying this so long, a friend of mine went to one of those, and they were handing out these flyers, and it said on there, a communist program for escalating the Gaza solidarity movement. And inside of it, it talks about how they need to escalate this toward the election in the fall and to start the riots and revolution. I mean, it's the whole game plan laid out. And who was it put out by? And I looked at the last page. Revolutionary Communists of America. They don't miss a trick. And they see kids stirring up, or they stir the kids up, they're going to make sure they're accomplishing their purposes, period. That's what they're all about. What have we lived through? I know there's a lot, I believe when I've been here before, a lot of Chinese Americans here. I don't know if there's any here today in this area of California. But we're living through Mao's Cultural Revolution. It's been going on more subtly in America because we're still armed. But it's the same thing he did back in 1966. He said we have to get rid of the old culture, old ideology, old customs, and old traditions. They have to go. And that's what he did in China. Erase the past so you can create the communist future. And they don't know where they came from. They don't know what it used to be like. And so that's where they are. But as you look at our country, and this is why it's sobering, that long march through the institutions that Antonio Gramsci talked about, they've been successful. I mean, it should drive us to our knees if nothing else. God help us. I'm sorry that we allowed them, these lying, atheistic, wicked people, to come in and take over all the positions of influence. A Christian should be in every position of influence with the truth. But you look through our educational system today, it's wrecked. Entertainment, Hollywood, just garbage, just spewing the party line and lying to the children. Sin doesn't have a consequence. God's not real, on and on. Media, news, big businesses. I'm shocked about that. Almost the board of every big business, where does all their funding go? To radical causes. Black Lives Matter itself got hundreds of millions of dollars of donations from big companies in America. Like, why would you be giving to something like that? The foundations, the colleges and universities, a lot of the churches, the government. What is the deep state in Washington, D.C.? It's the communist apparatus that Whittaker Chambers talks about. He was part of in the 1930s. It's never been uprooted. So what is the deep state? It is the Marxists there that embedded themselves back in the 1930s, have never been removed, and they keep hiring fellow travelers. That's why all of our policies, all of the things our State Department does is always anti-American. It's always anti-freedom. While they're talking those things, you look at the actions, you go, why are you doing these things that you're doing? Why do they love war? Why do they just, do what they do? Because it's to grind America down. It's to bankrupt us. They knew if we ever want world communism, which we're going to have one day, America has got to go. And it's always been the marching orders. A lot of you are familiar with, the 45 current communist goals from the 50s. I love these because it showed how they always had a plan. And their plan was to destroy our biblical morality, to destroy the family, to destroy everything God intended to build the structures of a healthy, strong society that protected the innocence of children instead of defiling it. That's the number one change I've seen over my life. When I was young, everyone, even every lost man, they were protecting the innocence of children. I'll never forget, on my neighborhood, on our street, there was one man who was an alcoholic. And he'd always be sitting out in front of his garage in a lawn chair. And as a boy, I walked by his house 10 times a day, going to my best friend's house. And And every time I walked by, he'd have a beer in his hand. He would hide it behind his back as I walked by and wave to me. And I thought, isn't that amazing? I mean, for 20 years, hi, Curtis. He knew, he goes, I'm an alcoholic, but I don't want to influence this young man to be one. He even had, there was enough biblical fiber where even people that did wicked, yeah, they did wicked, but they did it down the dark alley around the corner. They were ashamed of what they were doing. They're no longer ashamed. They're proud of it. And pride goes before destruction. And that's why it should we should be praying for our country and be fearful, because God will not tolerate that pride very long before he has to act. But these goals, just a few of the Christian type ones in case you haven't heard them because they're so powerful. Goal 24, this is 1950s Communist Party USA. Their goals. Here's what we got to do in America. So just picture, leave it to Beaver. Goal 24, eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. We live in an obscene culture today. But they knew you get it obscene, it just starts collapsing. Goal 25, break down the cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. How do they know pornography will destroy a society, but we don't seem to know that? I mean, it's unbelievable. That's what shocked me. And then I realized, I was actually talking to John Stormer, one of my dad's old friends. I go, I don't get it. Why are they destroying the very country they live in? He laughed and he goes, Curtis, this has been going on since the Garden of Eden. It's Lucifer. That's who he is lying to them. They're his disciples. He's lying because he wants to destroy them too. And so that's why they don't see the things they're doing are collapsing the very place they live and their grandkids will grow up in. And it's a spirit, back to what I said at the beginning, what God said in Ephesians 6. This is a spiritual battle. And you have to fight it in a spiritual way by being strong and putting on all the armor. You read Ephesians 6 tonight or this week with your family and look at the different pieces of the armor. Do you have that on? If not, you need to get it on. You need to plug in things going on in this church to help you grow and understand the times and become wise, because even a Christian can be so easily deceived if they have not attained wisdom and discernment and understanding. And we need to do that because it's a great blessing to our neighbor when they see us not falling for the lies and things. But on and on the list goes, discredit the family and infiltrate the church and on and on. But they knew. All right, I'm going to close with this. I read this first, probably 40 years ago, 50 years ago, this letter. And when I read it, every time I read it, I'm kind of ashamed of myself. And I'm not reading it so you'll be ashamed of yourself. I'm reading so hopefully you'll be sensitive to the Holy Spirit and realize I want to be committed to the truth as these people are committed to a lie. Because I have the truth. It is worth dying for. It is worth fighting for. It is worth following and sharing. And it's everything. And this is a letter from a young man who went on a trip to Mexico over a summer and became a communist while he was there. And he wrote his fiancée a letter back, and he told her, here's why I can no longer marry you. I found a new love. And I'm just going to read a little bit of it, but listen to his commitment to communism. And ask yourself, are you as committed to Jesus Christ as this gentleman is? We communists have a philosophy of life which no amount of money could buy. We have a cause to fight for, a definitive purpose in life. We subordinate our petty personal selves into a great movement of humanity. And if our personal lives seem hard or our egos appear to suffer through subordination to the party, then we are adequately compensated by the thought that each of us in his small ways contributing to something new and true and better for mankind, the struggle for world communism. There is one thing in which I am dead earnest, and that is the communist cause. It is my life, my business, my religion, my hobby, my sweetheart, my wife and mistress, my bread and meat. I work at it in the daytime and I dream of it at night. Its hold on me grows, not lessens, as time goes on. Therefore, I cannot carry on a friendship, a love affair, or even a conversation without relating to this force which both drives and guides my life. I evaluate people, books, ideas, and actions according to how they affect the communist cause and by their attitudes towards it. I've already been in jail because of my ideas, and if necessary, I'm ready to go before a firing squad. We've got the truth. We have something that's worth doing that for. Communism is not. But what we have is, and it is the only solution to communism, is the gospel of Jesus Christ. The musicians, if they want to come up now, can. That is, but you have to know that's what you have. You have the answer for all the questions of our time, everything. It is Christianity. It is Jesus Christ. Why are people caught up in all the foolishness of this world? Because they know there's got to be some point to it, but they can't find what it is. You need to tell them. You need to share the gospel with them. All of man's ways, which will end in communism, they also end in death. And we need to love our neighbor enough to say, no, I have to share that with them. It's the solution. We need to live the truth, stand for the truth, and share the truth, and live a life that is not by lies. Your life, what you say, needs to be consistent with what you do. We have to be faithful in that. Why? Because it makes Jesus look good. And that's our only job on this earth. To make, when someone meets us, we've made him look good. And we need to do that. So I leave you with this, the little 4 things I came up with. Pray, prepare, separate, and share. Pray for God's help and wisdom and direction. Prepare. I think we have some rough days coming. I just do. You see the road we're on. If we do not turn, we're going to have some rough days. So we need to be prepared for those. Toughen up and be ready to be a light in the darkness. We need to separate out. God said, be separate. Be different. Be holy. Don't be in love and playing footsies with the world when you've said, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Don't be watching junky movies or doing things. No. We need to be consistent in that. God loves it when he sees us boldly being sacrificially committed to him because we love him. And we are so grateful for what he did on that cross for us. And then the last thing there, we share. You can't keep that good news to yourself. The world it's what they're looking for, whether they know it or not. It's what every communist is looking for, whether he knows it or not. Purpose, meaning, and hope. And the only place to find that is in Jesus. Thank you so much.